Hey, good morning. Welcome to Connect Daily Bread. We recognize man does not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God. Today's reading is in 2 Corinthians chapter 2. Pretty short chapter there, so go ahead and read that, check that out, and I'll just share some of the thoughts that stuck out to me. So we see Paul at the beginning of the chapter address a painful visit that took place. All right, so between the letter that he wrote, 1 Corinthians to the church there, and 2 Corinthians, he made a visit. And he calls it a painful visit, and we see that theme come up a few times in it, particularly in chapter 7. We see this idea of pain and sorrow. And the reason there was pain is because there was just so much stuff that Paul had to address, that they were doing wrong. And I'm sure it was difficult conversations, an emotional time. And so Paul, because he loves them so much, didn't like that he had to bring pain into their life by sharing some hard things. But because of his love, he was willing to push through the discomfort of that and to have the hard conversation so that they could experience the changes that needed to take place. And in here we see a reference to 1 Corinthians chapter 5. So there was a guy that was caught up in a super messed up situation, engaged in destructive behavior with either his mother or his stepmother. The text it doesn't delineate who that was, but we know he was doing some messed up stuff with his father's wife is how the text reads. And so there's a protocol that God through Paul told the church to follow, and they did the hard thing, and this gentleman was cut off from them for a time, so that, as 1 Corinthians 5 says, so that his soul may be saved on the day of judgment. And the desire and the hope there was that there would be a turning that would take place, that he would ultimately turn back to Christ and go Jesus. It appears to be the case. And so now Paul's saying, hey, go ahead and affirm your love for this guy. We don't want him to be broken and heaped in guilt. There is no condemnation in Christ, as Romans 8 lays out. And so he says, go ahead and affirm your love for this guy, and know that I'm affirming that love too. Forgive, and if there's anything for me to forgive, know that I have in the sight of God. And then he tells us in verse 12 to not allow ourselves to be unaware of the schemes of the enemy. There's just so much wisdom there, and as we recognize that as disciples, as believers, we have an enemy in Satan that is roaming around as a roaring lion, looking for those to destroy. And he's attacking constantly through different avenues and different means, but he has schemes, and his schemes are very clear to bring about death and destruction. See, he hates God, and he can't harm God, and so what he goes for is to harm the children of God, and that being us. And so there's just so much wisdom for you and I to take away from that, of being aware of the enemy's scheme, knowing that Satan's trying to attack, trying to discourage, defeat, divide, and discourage us. And as we're aware of that, hopefully we can make some choices to be under God's armor. Ephesians 6 walks us through that, and the whole purpose of that armor is to then be engaged in prayer for all the Lord's people. So be praying for one another, to be intentionally, deliberately encouraging to each other, right? If we recognize there's a discourager out, well, how as a family can we combat that? By being actively encouraging to one another in word and in deed. Hebrews 10 talks about that, of, man, don't get in the habit of missing the assembly, of that word ecclesia, but it's just the word in the original language and Greek of meeting together for Sunday morning worship like we do at Connect, and staying in the habit of that so that we can encourage each other, stir each other up to love and good deeds. And we see modeled right in the book of Acts, that they're Acts 2, 42 and 47, how they're doing life together, meeting together constantly, breaking bread, praying, all of those things that kept about an encouragement and an enthusiasm. So it's so awesome to see during the prayer revolution, particularly the unity, the commitment, the passion that's there, and just the time being spent together. So let's keep up that same energy through the prayer revolution, and then also past the prayer revolution, that we would just really adopt a position of being our brother's keeper, of sharpening and caring for one another, aware of the schemes of the enemy. Paul's still addressing, after that, he's still addressing these accusations from these super apostles that have credentials, letters of approval that say that they're the real deal. And Paul says, hey, I don't need that. You guys are my letter of approval, right? It was Paul and Apollos and a group of other faithful Jesus people that established this Jesus community there in Corinth. And they are the fruit of him and others' labor there. And you're saying, okay, yeah, you guys are my credential. You guys are my letter. And so Paul's still dealing with the backlash and these guys pushing against him, trying to undermine what his role and his influence for the Corinthian church, and they have selfish, manipulative purposes for that. These would also be some of the schemes to be aware of. So that's something that you and I can take hold of, is to remember those who shared Christ with us, considering the outcome of their life, and emulating that, taking hold of that, not allowing Satan to plant seeds of mistrust for those who have tried to love us and have loved us and cared for us. So these are some things to think on today. I hope you guys read that chapter, check this out, and comment what stood out to you. Love you guys. Have a good one.